Comrades, no doubt you'll remember several days ago I made a video about Kshama Sawant, the woman who ran for city council, who says she's a socialist and won, and that the entire Marxist community was, or most of it anyway, was so happy about this. They were all a joy that a socialist got elected. And my criticism was that, well, she's a Trotskyist, part of the socialist alternative. She's a Trotskyist. Actually, I do want to change the statement I made because I was actually kind of wrong on that. She is part of a socialist organization, but she is a social democrat. Like, she says she's a socialist, but social democracy is what seems to be coming from the things that she advocates. I'm well aware that she talked about seizing the means of production from Boeing if they were to leave, but I do want to speak on that and why that's not necessarily a revolutionary thing coming from her. There are some other details that have come out about her and things that she's done that I think are important questions to look at when considering whether or not she's a socialist or whether or not she's revolutionary. So for the record, I will say that I take back the statement that she's a trot, even though she's coming from a trot organization. She is, in substance, a social democrat. To start, I would like to talk about her past. She grew up in India. She went to university. She graduated. She married a man who's fairly wealthy who works for Microsoft. She moved to the United States and also got a job there with Microsoft. So she already came from an extremely privileged position. She came from the Brahmin class. And a woman who goes to the university in India can count herself very, very lucky. Now, she came from a fairly wealthy family and moved to the United States, married a wealthy guy, and got a job at Microsoft because of that. So really, she's never been hard up for money or really experienced poverty. Now, that in itself is not necessarily a problem. I'm not saying she's bad because she's never experienced poverty, although somebody in the comment section will say that. There is more to it than that. Sawant's financial disclosure report also lists her own income at her part-time jobs as being between $4,000 and $19,000 and assets in two accounts, a checking account and an insurance fund that are each worth between $40,000 and $99,999. Taking the minimum possible amount for all their incomes and assets, then the Sawants have at least $80,000 in their accounts and together earn at least $108,000 through the true amount is probably higher. That's a pretty big chunk of change for a self-proclaimed representative of the 99%. When you take all of that and count yourself as a representative of the 99%, $108,000 really is not working class. You're really not one of the working class or even middle class people for that matter. Is she part of the 99%? Well, no, she's not in the top 1% of the entire country, but she could hardly call herself working or even middle class with that kind of income. Now let's deal with her so-called socialism in general. She did go to school in India and she went into school in the United States as well. And her dissertation was elderly labor in a less developed rural economy. I mean, that's pretty good. That's something that to my recollection, nobody else has actually dealt with before. So I would give her credit for not only being original, but actually dealing with something that is an issue in India, because the population, given the way the population is in India right now, I think that's actually pretty important. And then she makes this statement about global poverty. The job of socialists is to point the way forward, and we are not shy about it. We invite people to debate with us on ideas of socialism, but we are not shy, and we have been proven resoundingly correct that we should not be shy, because there is no excuse for being shy or research when you are talking about such serious issues as fighting against the enormous misery that capitalism unleashes on us all over the world. So let's be clear about it. Let's not be shy. This is not a time for modesty. This is a time for boldness and courage. Well, these are very strong words, and words that are very true. But my question is this. If she is concerned about global poverty, given all her education, and there's an extraordinary amount of education there, the clear depth of knowledge for conditions, particularly in India, which could also probably be applied to the third world as well, why is she running for city council in the richest first world nation? Why does she not take this education and expertise back to India and fight the real, overwhelming poverty that exists in that country? I think that's an important question to ask. Well, why not take it back to your own situation? Why take the least poor working class people in the entire world? She has all these benefits that she could offer the truly wretched of the earth. Yet instead, she chooses to stay in the first world and help the most privileged group of working class people in the world. I mean, what's up with that? It speaks of global poverty and the terribleness that is, and demonstrates a knowledge on that, yet chooses to do the least revolutionary thing while still count as doing something by running for city council in a rich city in a rich first world country. Why is she trying to raise wages in the US and not help the truly wretchedly poor in India, her home? Now let's talk about her whole stance on Boeing. She says that if Boeing takes jobs out of the city, which they are threatening to do, she will seize the means of production and retool those means of production to do something else. Except if she really was a socialist and really was trying to change everything, why wouldn't she just seize them anyway? I mean, what exactly is she doing here? And so what if Boeing just leaves and then she's going to seize the means of production and retool them to something else? A good question here would be, with what capital? The city doesn't have the means to do that. It doesn't have the finance capital to do that. Yes, it could borrow it, but that would be probably a very difficult and costly thing to do with like on a city level. It's not the same thing as the federal government doing it. I mean, what is she going to retool it to? She says buses and things like that. Okay, does she have contracts lined up for these buses or the other things that these machines could be retooled to do? I mean, socialism doesn't work by you just walk in, seize the means of production, and now it's a fully integrated piece of the economy. It doesn't work that way. If you're going to seize the means of production in the context of a capitalist system, you damn well better have a plan for that, or it's not going to achieve anything. And in the end, this really isn't a threat against Boeing anyway, because they can just open a plant somewhere else, send movers to go and pick up the machines and take them out of the building, because they still own the machines and they still own the building. What they can do is move those because it's their legal property before even announcing that the place is going to close. She would essentially have to seize them before any announcement would be made. And even then, she would have to go through an entire bourgeois, bureaucratic process in order to have the bourgeois legal foundation for seizing the means of production to begin with. And this is even assuming she can even do all that, and none of the other city councilors would oppose it, no less the mayor. Again, this is claiming that she can do a lot, and she's claiming she can do a lot when she really doesn't have the legal power to do so in the bourgeois structure. I mean, a lot of the people who are just championing this aren't realizing that they're called capitalists for a reason. They own the capital. They own the system. It doesn't work. She's going through the bourgeois liberal democratic process, which probably, more than likely, wouldn't even let her do it to begin with. She's essentially threatening the bourgeois with their own system that they own. Well, what kind of a threat is that, to threaten them with their own state mechanism? Now, even aside from all this, most of the policies she's arguing are reforms. If she's a socialist, why is she arguing reforms and not revolution? I mean, I'm not saying she has to argue to walk in and use violence, but she should be arguing to radically transform society. She's not doing that. Higher wages, more social benefits. She's propping up the bourgeois state. This is not going to bring revolution. I'm not saying dismantle everything that working class people need to survive. I'm not saying dismantle, social programs. I'm saying what she's doing is propping up the bourgeois state. And I think this actually leads us to a very important question. What exactly is Sawant? Is she really a socialist? Because it seems more like she's a social democrat. Now, she's part of a group that's called the Socialist Alternative. Well, we have socialism. I'm really wondering about that title, because she's arguing for reforms, not radical change. And here's another important question. Where is the media outrage? Why isn't Fox News screaming its head off about this? Why isn't the right-wing reactionary radio shows going on about this constantly, about a socialist being elected, even to an office as small as a city council? It's been pretty much dead silence from them. And that alone makes me suspicious. Why is the bourgeois and its media ignoring her victory? Hey, maybe I'm being paranoid, but I think it is worth noting that there is an odd silence coming from them. So to me, I see this as two possible things. Either she was an idealist that believed in revolution at some time and has been bought off by the first world system, bought off with the benefits of living in the first world, which actually kills a lot of the worker struggles here, being offered really nice things so that you don't take to the streets and overthrow the system. I mean, that happens to a lot of people. At best, I think this is what could have happened to her. At the worst, she may actually be like an agent of the bourgeois. I mean, think about it. Why previously say all this great stuff about fighting poverty and then just end up being a city councilor that makes proposals that she can't even carry out? Why leave the idea of radical change and now start arguing reform? I think that's actually genuinely a real question. Is she an idealist that's just given up? Or is she an agent of the bourgeois? And I would tend to think that maybe she really could be an agent of the bourgeois, given how quiet the media has been on this. Maybe they do know more about her past than we do. Maybe they know something that we don't know. I do know this. The whole situation seems a little bit strange to me. She's clearly not revolutionary. She's clearly pushing reforms, not radical change. And that doesn't necessarily mean that she has to use violence or something like that. She's not arguing changing everything. She's arguing little reforms. And possibly the one most important thing, she's gone through the bourgeois liberal democratic process. And since when has that ever led to any real change? Thank you for watching. Go ahead, rate, comment, subscribe, share on various social media. And if you want, there's some other great content here you could check out.